Nathan gave this to you?
What the are you?
You gotta be kidding me!
Oh.
Oh, grab it! Monkey! Oh, no.
Come here. Did you do this? I think you did. I think we know the culprit.
When Roger met Stephanie Lloyd, the CEO of LiveWell in Zurich, they immediately got caught in a lively conversation about how difficult it is to challenge the current business models from within. What the critical success factors are of creating a new business as part of an incumbent, because she did that before and very successfully. Stephanie was the founder and president of Toggle, a venture of Farmers Insurance, the Zurich brand in the US, and head of new ventures for Farmers Insurance as well. And she had so many great learnings to share. Well, time was flying, and after an hour and a half, they both had the feeling they could have talked for another hour and a half. So they decided just to continue the conversation here on stage today. Please welcome Stephanie Lloyd.
Let's first start with some background on Toggle, because I think that's where we had all our conversations about. Can you tell us a bit more? When did it start, and what the whole concept is about?
Yeah, I have to say, seeing the commercials for the first time in over a year hit home. So that was an amazing time in my life. So let's quickly do a bit of a road tour of my journey at Farmers. So joined Farmers in 2007, worked through product management, distribution, ended up chief underwriting officer in Los Angeles for personal lines. And one day, I remember it like it was yesterday, March of 2018, CEO invited me to lunch. And he said, we're having a challenge. We've done updated consumer research and segmentation, and we're not getting our proportionate share of the next generation consumer. But we're doing a large legacy, transformation, touching all the systems, and we can't distract and we can't delay what's going on there. So what we want you to do is start a new business unit, building products and services for millennials. Don't use Farmers tech. Don't try to pipe into SAP, no offense for SAP, and have revenue in market by October 1st. And at that point, I was a team of one. I had to go home and Google what is a tech stack. And it started, and so it was focused on millennials. I was given seed funding, and then an audacious date of October 1st for revenue.
And what did the concept ended up with? What did you create?
Yeah, so really it was that amazing time in your career where we had a blank piece of paper and we could do anything. So it didn't have to be insurance necessarily, it could have been services. But what we found is a gap in the marketplace. There were products that were honestly 30 to 50 years old. A lot of the insurtechs in this space building for next generation consumers were creating beautiful digital experiences, but not actually innovating on the product. So coverages for grave markers or China, wasn't really speaking to, modern day consumers. And so we just did a lot of consumer research to understand the gaps and the needs. And we just started to build the contract at the same time as we were building the UX and the pricing so that everything actually worked together, which is how I think we stumbled onto something really incredible.
But what was that kind of thing that was incredible?
Renters insurance. So it was a direct to customer renters insurance product.
But it's more than just renter insurance, because you mentioned that customer research. What I find so incredible is that you found new things that were totally new to the insurance industry, and you actually included that in the product offering.
Yeah. So one thing I'm very proud of is that Farmers now owns the trademark for side hustle for insurance in the US. And being a 90-plus-year-old company, fairly conservative, the fact that they now use words like side hustle and pet parent as part of their everyday vernacular, I think was an achievement in and of itself. But that's exactly right. In the experience, what we learned in our research is that modern day consumers don't understand insurance. They're mistrusting of financial institutions. They actually don't know what they've bought after they've bought it. And so through that research, we identified, you could actually educate them on what the coverage does, what's important to them. If you're a sneakerhead, let's turn on this coverage. If you're a pet parent, turn on that coverage. But actually educated them on what they were getting as they went through the experience. So they left feeling empowered, left with trust, and our NPS was in the high 60s.
So it gave you good insights on the specific customer needs like transparency, but it also gave you insights on these are the number of renters and this is the percentage of people that have pets.
Yeah.
And these are the percentages of people that have side hustles.
Yeah.
So can you share those percentages?
Yeah, it was, 70% of renters at the time, back in 2018, didn't have renter's insurance, and 70% were pet parents. They had bought a pet, and this was pre-pandemic, before everybody went out and bought a COVID puppy. So those numbers, I would imagine, are even higher today.
So it was actually an easy insight to include pet insurance into renter insurance.
Exactly.
Is that also part of the success?
It is, and I would also say, again, the customization that afforded. So you're not building in coverages that aren't useful or meaningful to a customer. If I, am a gig economist or I drive for Uber or have a pet, then I know to turn on certain coverages, and we walk you through that. Instead of asking you a million underwriting questions, we're really focused on the need itself and allowing you to customize it.
Now, it's already a couple of years underway. Can you share some numbers on where you are with Toggle?
Yeah, so we started humble beginnings of 0, and before I left last year, we were just approaching $500 million.
$500 million, my God.
Yeah.
And what was the path that you...
There were lots of pivots. So I think one thing that I came to learn and appreciate through the journey is you've got to make the best informed decision at the time, but you aren't going to know everything. You're not going to get it right, from day one, and you just got to keep making progress. So we made some pivots. We started off as direct to consumer. In Farmers, we have a large established exclusive agency force, so there's channel conflict when you come in with a direct to consumer digital offering. So you've got to be able to navigate some of that channel conflict. And so spending money to support a new brand that was perceived as competing with our, bread and butter agency force was a bit difficult. So we ended up finding our way into embedded insurance. And right before I left, we just launched Toyota insurance. So in the US, when you see Toyota auto insurance, that's actually Toggle behind the scenes, doing everything start to finish.
So it's really pivoting the strategy and getting to that 500 million figure, right?
And actually, shout out to the team because they just texted yesterday that they launched homeowners. So now they have renters, auto, and homeowners direct through partners and embedded into experiences. So now when you get a mortgage or refi, you can actually turn on homeowners insurance as part of that flow.
It certainly shows the success of that you have in younger generations. So what would be the success, because everyone's struggling with that, right? So what are, in your view and your experience, the success factors of addressing the real and striking the right chord among those younger generations?
I think we started with, how do you attract more millennials? But what we found is it's just really, again, understanding how to build experiences that solve, very specific problems and are relevant in the moment. So what we thought would be very specific to a generation actually spanned multiple generations. We had users, in their 18 all the way up to, 70s that were digitally savvy. So I think what we learned was build for a target, but that halo effect can be quite powerful.
But does it require then a different kind of innovation process, or?
I think what I would say, I'm a big believer in jobs theory and design thinking. So I think it's hard sometimes as an insurance professional when you've grown up in insurance to not just automatically go to, I have all of the answers. and actually talk to your users and talk to your customers and really understand from them. And you can't expect them to know your world. So you've got to do the research in a way where you uncover the needs, but don't expect them to be the experts, because we're the insurance professionals, we're the experts. So it was a lot of consumer research. We did research from the name to the coverages, to the UX, to even the reference size of Farmers in our logo. What was the right balance of Toggle as the new shiny and Farmers as the credible security? So we used consumer research for everything.
So it's not about asking them the needs, but it's more like living with them, understanding them, so that you can interpret their needs yourself.
When we started, again, 70% didn't have renter's insurance, and when we asked kind of why, the answer was always, well, I have nothing of value. And actually, when you started to understand, it's like, okay, well, what do you own? And when you start going through, what's your tech? And they start naming phones and laptops and gaming systems and, you know, all the things that they have in their homes, they actually started to realize they had things of value that they did want to protect, but they thought insurance was for their parents.
I can imagine. Now, quite a few incumbents, they decided to not launch a company themselves, but rather buy one, and then an insurtech, a challenger, and which would give them like fast access to either new technology or a new market. In general, what is your take on that strategy?
You know, I think it's very case specific, but for us, what I think the balance we struck, which I think was really helpful, was we took folks inside the organization that had the mindset that we needed, had areas of expertise that we could draw on, and we combined that internal talent with then an insurtech. So we partnered with a company called Sure Inc., sureapp.com if anyone's interested, but they had the tech. And actually, I think together we upskilled both teams to speak each other's language and get really good. And I don't think we could have done that if we had relied solely on an internal team. On the opposite side, I think if Farmers had just bought something external, the first was they didn't know what to buy. They didn't know what they exactly wanted to do. They just knew they had a challenge with bringing in that consumer, and they wanted to test their way into more and more investment. So I think sometimes when you buy, obviously that's a big upfront investment. I think there's culture clashes. You know, I was previously chief underwriting officer, and what that did for me is I had the internal credibility, I knew the players, I knew the network, I could set up the right engagement model between what we called then the core or the mothership and us as the speedboat. And I think sometimes if you go totally external, right, that connective tissue is not there. And strategically for Toggle, one thing we did was try to use our position inside of Farmers to get external support. So from different SaaS platforms or vendors or strategic partners, work with us as a POC. We can move faster, we can eliminate barriers. If we get wins on the board, you can now get into Farmers. And then we followed through, and that helped Farmers.
But let's go back to the day that you got that assignment, day one or day zero. Did you already have then a team in place, or how did you build? What was your first 100 days?
Yeah, so I freely admit this, even though it's not super flattering. I accepted the position and I went home and I cried on my couch for 3 hours because I had a great track record at Farmers. I was chief underwriting officer. I could have been quite happy in that role for a number of years. And I didn't even know what a tech stack was. So I said yes to something because I knew it was a growth opportunity for myself, but I felt completely inadequate in the moment. But I got to pick my team from handpicked. And so one thing I did, over your journey, you always collect people, right? You know the people that if ever given a chance to build your team, you'd go get them. And I had filled my roster of people I would always want to hire in the moment. And I just started doing it.
So you built your screen from scratch?
From scratch. I was a team of one, and slowly but surely, but when we launched, we went from signing a contract with our new tech partner to building the website, building the coverages, filing it, getting it live in 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks?
But it takes we actually had to be small it's like the irony of it. We needed to be small to be able to do that in that time frame because of the demands of getting all the perspectives, executing it in a really efficient way. So we were a team of basically 8.
And those 8 people, where did it come from?
So some were internal to farmers. One's in the audience now, Ekta Ranjan, who I convinced to come with me on my next startup. So again, you collect people throughout your career that you want by your side. And then others were folks that actually had worked at farmers and had left. But I knew they were top talent and was able to convince them to come back for this amazing opportunity.
Well, now, often what you see is that at some point, the incumbent wants to integrate that new fast speedboat again. And in the process, often much of the magic of the startup is being squashed, so to say. So what do you think about that? You know, we were fortunate that we had one meeting with a startup coach who happened to be in the health space, had started an insurtech inside of a large mothership. And the advice he gave me was the antibodies will come. So very well intended, right? The rest of the organization, very well intended, meaning really good, great, talented people that serve a purpose. But if they come in force, they can overwhelm you and they can take you down. And so we proactively went to all of the assurance providers, other shared services within farmers to really help them understand their role, how they could contribute, how they could help us move faster. But it was going to be a different engagement model. It was, we'll come to you because we respect and understand your value and your role, but we can't carry the weight of the normal bureaucracy and burden of some of these other assurance, functions or shared service providers. So it was don't come to us, we'll come to you, but in a very healthy, respectful way. And that allowed us to move fast, but then we relied on farmers' strengths. I mean, the claims group is fantastic. The service team is fantastic. How do we leverage those strengths to help us go further without, again, being suffocated by it? And which domains are most vulnerable to be sort of damaged by too much activity from the parent?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, because I think it can span all of it. I think one thing we learned as an example is we were trying to speak to a different audience. And so from a marketing perspective, the positioning of the product, the word choices that made sense for the farmer's brand and the farmer's target customer actually wasn't as relevant for our audience. So I had to go to the board. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I had to go to the board to get permission to use like a picture of a mimosa on our website, or to use the word covered instead of coverage. Like little things, but we fought those battles because we thought that they were important for our target audience. And also we wanted to show the rest of the organization that they could maybe dip their toes into these other areas. The other thing I would say about IT is we used Farmers IT for a lot of consultation, but one thing we found really valuable with the outside IT provider is they lived in the insurtech space. They built from modern cloud technology. They just had a different approach, and they were code snobs. So I say that with as much love and affection as possible, but they were code snobs. So if we asked for something that they didn't think made sense to build for their platform, they would push back on us, and it actually ended up with us being better together because of that. And I don't think I would have gotten that internally.
So it's also what you mentioned in your example, creating the right expectations on also what you would like from them, having them also celebrate the value that you created together. So what would be like the right distance between an initiative like Toggle and a parent like Farmers, in your experience there?
Yeah, I think more than geographic distance, I think it's just the engagement model that you set up. But I think there is some separation needed because you need to think differently. You need to move faster. You have a different risk appetite. And I think some distance allows you to have a bit more clarity of thinking around that. Whereas if you're fully embedded, 2 desks away, it's easier to get sucked into doing things how you've always done things. And I don't mean that in a very negative way, but we've got different missions.
Yeah.
In my old role as underwriting, I was looking for incremental change, optimization. I mean, it's 90 years of experience. At Toggle, it was about how do you move quickly? How do you break things and learn from that quickly? And that's just a different mindset. And I think separation allows for some of that.
You mentioned that you're very selective on the kind of competencies that you use within farmers, and the ones that were great, you really use them to the max. But of course, you're also creating a lot of new knowledge and experience within Toggle, which is of course of value to the parent. So how did you organize that flow of new experience, new expertise?
Yeah, I think one of the best examples I could share, our growth, it's slow in early days. You're doing a lot of capability building, you're doing a lot of testing, and so the growth is not as quick as I would have liked, right? So how did I get wins on the board? This was my strategy. How do I start getting wins on the board that show value back to the mothership? While to buy myself more time for the little green shoots of growth and winnings to emerge. And so as we started to really get our marketing tech stack up and running, and we're learning, again, the relationship to NPS, what we were doing there, our acquisition cost was, I think, half of what the farmer's cost was. So we were learning through our tech stacks, and so we were using that as ways of informing where was it worth farmers investing. So we had a customer data platform. We had data feeding real time into paid search algorithms to really attract the right audience to the platform. How do we take those learnings, give it to them, and just a 5% improvement on their side funds what our cost was. So looking for some of those strategic wins to buy us more runway.
It's a nice example. This morning, Giacomo Lovati explained the same kind of mechanism that he applied, and just in funding his operation as well. To close, what would you see as the key success factors of creating a new initiative from within, but outside the company?
I think honestly, you've got to look for people with the right mindset. I think that's what I learned is we actually went out for talent and we said, we don't know even what we're looking for because we don't even know what we're building. So we kind of did a casting call, submit videos telling us why you want to be on the team. Like, here's the mission. Tell us why you want to be on the team. What's your superpower? And then we started looking for the people with the right superpowers, with the right mindset, and then bringing them in. And we created a culture. And I know this is a buzzword, but psychological safety, I would credit to a lot of our success because the team was sitting at a table, one actuary, one marketer, one technologist, one business development, we had one of everything, but they were safe to talk, and they grew and they developed and they expanded into new areas that they'd never imagined venturing into before. And I think it was that culture. And then understanding how to execute, so crawl, walk, run, was a very different mindset. In my former life, it was, let's get every requirement into this project because the project got funded and I don't know if I'll get another chance. So let's put everything in there. And in this world, it's what's the minimum lovable product, right? What's the minimum thing that you need to get in to test if it's going to work? And so I would say those two aspects of the culture and the mindset that we brought together, I think was our success factors.
So it is about giving your staff superpowers. So at the end of the day, in execution, they can give superpowers to your customers.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Love it.